go ahead and call this meeting to order. On behalf of the governing board, I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. It is Tuesday night, November 14th. This is a regular meeting of the Catalina Foothills School District Governing Board. We have members of the public attending both in person and remotely through YouTube Live. And in a few minutes, I'll read the rules of order for public comment at governing board meetings. If you wish to make a comment remotely, you should have signed up using the Google form that's available on the YouTube Live, under the YouTube Live description. If you don't see the link to the Google form, you can refresh the YouTube live stream. If you are attending in person, the purple form, request to address the governing board, is available on the table in the back of the room. And with that, I'm going to ask you all to rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read the rules of order. The governing board welcomes public comment at its meetings by providing 2 opportunities to address the board. If your topic of interest is not on the agenda, you may address the board during the public comment time slot near the beginning of the meeting. Or if the topic is on the agenda, you may choose to speak just prior to the discussion of that agenda topic. In the event there is a public hearing, the opportunity to speak will be reopened. If you are joining remotely and wish to make a public comment, you should have already submitted the Google form provided with the YouTube link. For those attending in person, please hand a completed purple form, request to address the governing board, to our board secretary. The information requested on the form is required for our meeting minutes. Speakers will be called on when it's their turn to address the board. For those attending remotely, you may choose to enable your camera. As a reminder to remote attendees who wish to speak, please unmute your microphone when you're called upon. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board. The sound of the buzzer indicates the end of your 2 minutes. In the event of a large number of speakers, the board may need to limit that time so they can conduct the business on the agenda. By law, the board cannot discuss, consider, or vote on any topic that is not on the agenda. This assures the community that they are aware of the topics that will be discussed at any meeting. If you wish to discuss a topic through written communication, board members' contact information can be found on the district's website. We appreciate the community's attendance both in person and remotely, and we thank you for your comments at this meeting. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bartlett, who's going to go through outstanding achievements in our district.
Thank you. I'm pleased to highlight the following CFSD student and staff achievements. Although there's many names listed, I'm not going to list every name, but they will be in tomorrow's border for anyone who wants to refer to that. Our first achievement is that all of our schools in CFSD earned the ranking of A by the Arizona Department of Education.
Go schools.
Yes, the state's A through F letter system is an accountability model for our schools. Congratulations to all of our capable students and staff for once again achieving the top grade. So that was quite an achievement. Our high school music, we have choir, orchestra, and band all earning honors. So our concert choral, our concert silver, and our change of pace earned the highest possible rating, superior with distinction, at the Regional Fall Choral Festival hosted by CFHS. There were 23 other choirs who attended. So Concert Silver received the highest performance score, and Change of Pace received the highest sight reading scores of any choir in the festival. And their teacher and director is Jeffrey Evans. Kudos to our Sinfonia and Symphonic Strings Orchestra on their performance on Friday, October 20th at the Arizona Band and Orchestra Directors Association Fall Orchestra Festival held at Tucson High. Sinfonia earned an excellent with recognition, and Symphonic Strings earned a superior with distinction. And their teacher and director is Ryan Watson. And our Marching Falcons represented CFHS on Saturday, October 7th at the Bands of America Festival in Flagstaff. And this was the first time they've ever attended this. This year's festival had bands from Arizona, California, New Mexico, Colorado, and Nevada. Our Marching Falcons returned home having earned 8th place overall and 2nd place amongst the bands from Arizona. And that director is Renee Shane Boyd. Our cheer team on November 6th at the Arizona Crown Championships in Phoenix, the varsity and JV cheer teams both won 1st place. Varsity also won Showstopper, a Judge's Choice Award, which came with a paid bid award to the World Class Cheer Championship in April. And then our swim and dive. At the state championship, our Foothills girls girls swim and dive came in 2nd overall with junior Amber Janke winning 3 medals. And Foothills boys swim and dive junior Kyle Dow earned 1 gold medal and 1 silver medal. And their coach is Tamara Brandhuber. But we had many students who were in the top 10 results at the state championship for our swim and dive, and those names will appear in the border tomorrow. So lots of achievements by our staff and students.
Thank you. And the kudos keep coming because our next item on the agenda is our Catalina Foothills Star Award. Tonight we're going to be featuring the 2024 National Merit semifinalists and commended students, and our board member Doug Hadley is going to present.
Good evening. I am Doug Hadley. My notes over here, see how I do without the notes. Who was semifinalist or commended student? I got 1, 2, 3, 5. Good. Who's being with tonight? So let's start with big congratulations. What you guys have accomplished is rarefied air. Very difficult.
Oh yeah.
I know it was very they're all now in college or graduate school. And they're all smarter than me by a bunch. And exactly 0 of them were committed. Exactly 0 of them were semi-finalists. So, and hope. So you guys be here much of so what is it? National Merit Scholarship Corporation started back in 1955. Been around for a while. The dual purpose organization. One is to acknowledge you guys and encourage you to keep going with a little bit of money for donation. And then the other idea of the corporation was kind of a way from a corporate thing with scholarships. So there's a lot of corporate scholarships national. Kind of a dual role organization around for a long time. We'll geek out on some numbers just for fun. A whole bunch of people with the PSA way back a year ago, right, guys? Like billions, 3 million. About 1.3 million of the people who took the test qualified to compete for the scholarship. So that's our starting with 1.3 million. Of that 1.3 million, 50,000 get acknowledged. 36,000 with goals and 16,000 with so we're looking
the full price tag.
And then you run into some schools like Pomona and Purdue and Rose Pullman. These are schools that my kids look at or something like that. So that's why I looked it up. They do like $1,000 a year. Thanks for playing. That makes no sense. That's just why you'd be on the list at all. But then, yeah, let's see, Fordham, OSU. It's just very hit and miss. There's one more school on here that I liked. Yeah, can't find it now. So, yeah, again, hats off to you guys. Parliaments, it's money, go out of state, you get full ride in state. At least there's some sort of payoff. If I might watch America very well, but on these colleges, it's a lot of great. It's exciting. It's great. The school is not cheap. BU, that's the last one. But my daughter started graduate program at BU. They pay half, which by the way, BU actually gives you a little money at the end. So I'm gonna call up some names. I'm not sure who's here, who's not. And we'll ask some questions. So, and then at the very end, we'll get everybody up here. Parents will do some photos. All right. So let's start with the photo. Turn it down. Those who are here. So fun. Look, dude. Let's go with Riley Stone. Let's go with all schools are open. The 5 days, fully one, right? Yeah. Like out of state, but I don't know. All right. That's all I know. All right. Zachary Burke. Rather than going out of state.
I'm planning on majoring in electrical engineering, but I'm not currently
You say out of state.
applying both to, I'm accepted into UVA, and then I'm applying to the United States.
Great.
Right. Go to the semifinalists and the finalists. Likely.
Ready and script. Must be.
He's got his future planned.
Need to address.
Is that everyone?
Is that everybody who's here, Doug? Okay.
All right. That's nice, yeah. So nice. What did I just say?
Save yourself now.
Verbatim.
Yep.
Verbatim.
I've asked him to stop doing that.
No, you can't help it.
You are all welcome to stay. We'd love to have you, but of course it's up to you.
What are you doing next?
I'm looking at my agenda. Public comment.
Public comment.
I still got nothing here, so. Thank you, Doug. That was nice.
Thank
We
you,
appreciate
Doug.
that.
It's always such a delight to have kids and parents.
Oh, it's great.
It really is. And it really
Isn't it?
is.
It's the best.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And of course, tomorrow the boarder will list all the students' names because there were probably 4 or 5 students who weren't able to make it here this evening.
Plus the students.
yeah. We had 10
from-
total. We had 5 out of 10.
Plus the outstanding achievement students.
yes,
So
obviously.
lots of student
Yep,
achievement.
lots of student achievements in the border tomorrow.
Nice.
Look it up. Okay, we're going to move on to our public comment section. And I do have one purple form. And Ryan, it looks like we have no public comment online. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call Mr. Nicholas Lockwood to the podium.
If I go over, I do apologize.
Just listen for the buzzer.
I'm going to try not to because this is actually no ugliness today. This is actually a good thing. So I know that you guys were mentioning the band earlier, and I'm a parent of a senior who's been in the band for all 4 years, and it's really been probably the best thing ever for them to be a part of that team. And this year, as a parent of a senior, I was lucky enough to be even more involved with them from band camp. I'm going to be hopefully doing the Prescott trip, all of their competitions, feeding them. It's just incredible what our band moms, our pit crew, the volunteers do. But it's even more special to see what the kids do over the course of the year. This one's, like I said, it's a little hard for me because you go through all the work. I watch them all these competitions, and I'm looking for different things like, oh, my kid has talked about this. Did they do this? Or hey, did the woodwind sound better this time? You know. And so you mentioned BOA where they competed against some great teams that put in far more time. Like they literally have no lives compared to our kids. It's amazing. It really is. But the culmination of their year is U of A Band Day. And I got to go, I try to watch everything. And this time, instead of looking for something specific, I just wanted to take it in. It was the last time my kid was truly competing on the field. And I watched it, and it all came together. The music, the work they did, the just beauty they put on that field was absolutely incredible. Now, don't get me started about my bias towards the judging in that event. I'm not going to lie. I actually had messages from other bands and other parents that are like, what's going on? And the gas from the crowd itself said something. Thought I was watching 80s Soviet judging of the Olympics. But what really...
I'm going to give you 15 seconds to wrap it up.
So what really made it impressive to me was that with all the freshmen, with all the disappointment, that on the Tuesday of the last board meeting, they came back out on that field and they still performed their best. That they put on a show at Flowing Wells when they could have given up. When they could have said, all this work I did was for nothing. They made me proud. They made this district proud, and they made our community proud. And I'd like to thank the entire staff for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta go to dinner now, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to pull, highlight, discuss, question on the consent agenda?
I have a comment,
Yep.
as I usually do. Point out to our audience of one and whoever else might watch at some other point. Yeah.
We probably have some folks online.
I know, I hope so. One of the consent agenda are, full of items we deal with on a regular basis, and I always like to point out, even though we can go through these items quickly, they nonetheless address some very important things that we do. And tonight, I just want to note that in the gifts and donations memorandum, there is about $31,500 that represents funding from our booster clubs and FFO primarily. And the booster clubs and our FFOs are our partners, and without them, our students wouldn't have many of the opportunities that they do. And I think it's a very unique partnership that this district has with our booster clubs, our FFOs, also the foundation, and and our other entities. But in particular, $31,000 in a month.
In 1 month, yeah.
In 1 month toward, and it's every school. It's at every school at every level and affects every student. And so I wanted to express my appreciation. All those folks, it takes a lot of human capital and capital.
Real money, as we say.
Oh, very well said. Thank you, Amy. Anything else on any of the consent agenda items for this evening?
I'll make a motion.
Sure.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3.1, the governing board October 24th, 2023 regular meeting minutes as presented. 3.2, the expense voucher memorandum as presented. 3.3, the field trip request memorandum as presented. 3.4, the personnel memorandum as presented. 3.5, the acceptance with gratitude of the gifts and donation memorandum as presented.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Alrighty, our fourth section of our meeting tonight is a couple of items of unfinished business from 2 weeks ago, actually 3 weeks ago, right? 4.1, approval of revisions to policy IHA, and exhibit IHA-E, basic instructional program. This is a second reading, an action item for this evening. Dr. Bartlett.
Thank you. So this is a second reading, and after the first reading on the 24th, there were only a couple revisions that were recommended. So on page 31, we added a paragraph about the observance for Constitution Day. So we have that Constitution Day will be celebrated on the 17th, September 17th of each year. And on this day, the schools will dedicate a portion of the school day to age-appropriate education about the Constitution. So that was added in. And then down below, it was also added into the list of observance days of when to observe them if the day falls on a weekend or on a day when school is not in session. And other parts of this policy was really about the literacy coaches and literacy specialists being added to the list of teachers who would qualify as a literacy specialist, as a dyslexia designee for the schools. And then, of course, the date at the end of the policy as tonight for the approval of that. All other changes were the same as first reading.
Right.
Straightforward.
Yep.
Very straightforward.
And I think, if I remember correctly, we talked about how far along we are in accomplishing all of this training.
Well, we're, so the dyslexia designee, you really only need one per campus. But the training is so fantastic. All of our teachers K through 5 who teach English language arts have to get a literacy endorsement by 2028. So we are sending them through this training to get that endorsement. And so we're paying for that, we're funding for it, we've written a grant, we'll find out if we get that grant soon. But the grant will fund all of their coursework, and then they just have to take the test and get it onto their certificate. So,
Who would the grant be through?
Arizona Department of Education.
Okay.
And how long is the training?
The training is, well, it's equivalent of 45 semester, coursework hours. So there's 6 days of straight 6-hour training. There's 6 days in a row, and then you do another 9 additional hours outside of that. So it's very comprehensive.
It's a lot.
So outside of the addition of Constitution Day, which is something that we have always recognized and acknowledged and used in our curriculum, but it wasn't in the policy for whatever reason, these are the same changes that we heard about 3 weeks ago.
Probably wasn't in there because it's a federal holiday.
Maybe, yeah, maybe that's why.
Federal rec.
But now the policy lists everything that
Yes.
qualifies as observation day, as opposed to
Exactly.
cross-referencing to some other policy.
Exactly.
That makes more
Good.
sense.
Anything else on item 4.1?
I move that the governing board approve the revisions to policy IHA and exhibit IHA-E basic instructional program as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 3-0.
It would be pretty weird if the person who makes the motion or the person who seconds the motion then
It can
does not vote in
happen.
favor of the motion.
I can't remember in my, 11 years on the board it ever happening, but it can happen. All right, we're going to go to item 4.2 now. Approval of revisions to policy JLH, missing students, and policy JRCA and regulation JRCA-R, request for transfer of records. Again, a second reading and action item, Dr. Bartlett.
Correct. So these policies and regulations are grouped because of the language changes are all very similar. So, but after our first reading, there were no recommended changes. So in policy JLH missing students, the change just increases the number of days that we have for requesting transfer of records for pupils transferring in from 5 to 10 days. So we've made that change in policy JLH. And then, of course, at the end of that policy, the new date for the policy, which would be tonight, November 14th. In JRCA, of course, the policy, we needed to find a small change so that we could get the date changed. So I just eliminated the words "of the schools" for the policy date change as well. And then in the regulation, the change again increases the number of days from 5 to 10 on page 40. And then we removed, there's a time-stamped regulation that we had to do by June 30th of 2018. That's passed. We've completed that, so that doesn't need to remain in our policy any longer.
Motion?
If you'd like to.
Other comments? I move that the governing board approve the revisions to policy JLH, missing students, and policy JRCA and regulations JRCA, request for transfer of records, as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. All right, we are going to move on to new business. Item 5.1 is the consideration of revisions to policy GCC, professional/support staff leaves and absences. This is a first reading. Back to the Denise Bartlett show.
Got them all tonight. So this is a first reading, and this is a long policy, but we don't have many changes in it. This is the policy that, spells out how staff accrue and use their short-term leave or long-term leave. So it does not, what the wording in the accrual process of this policy does not really reflect our practice at this time, so we want the policy to reflect the practice. So to better articulate the practice, in the first paragraph, we've removed "and support staff" because we've given them a whole different paragraph. So we've taken out support staff, so that first paragraph is really for certificated staff. And instead of 1 day per month for each day actually were employed, it's actually worked. could be employed and not working, and you don't really accrue time when you're not working. So we needed to change it to the word worked. We've added this second paragraph that delineates how support staff personnel then accrue their work, their time off as well, and that is for actually being worked as well. You know, when you're on family medical leave or some long extended, you don't accrue time. So it has to be for them when they actually worked.
So I'm reading these two paragraphs next to each other. Is there a difference in the way support staff accrue short-term leave from certificated staff? Because I'm looking at the language and I can't parse the difference, but I'm maybe just being dense.
Well, the way that they actually accrue it, so for certificated staff, all of their leave is fronted up front.
Okay,
So they get their 80 hours at the beginning with the expectation that they're going to finish their contract. Now, if they don't finish their contract, then we would have to go back in and prorate that. For support staff personnel, they accrue them as the
As they go.
hours.
and that is stated elsewhere in the policy,
Yes.
right? I guess what you made the point of adding a separate paragraph for staff, support staff.
Right.
So I guess I thought that perhaps they accrue differently.
No, we just wanted it delineated between
Okay.
the
I just
support
wanted to
and
make
the
sure I wasn't
certificated.
missing
No, you
something.
didn't miss it.
Okay.
The first paragraph has the word is it designated amount?
Yes.
So I think that's the difference that Dr. Bartlett's talking about. Eileen?
Designated versus earned. There you
Earned,
go.
yes.
Boy, Amy, good catch. I read that about 7 times
Yeah.
and didn't pick it up. So, thank you.
So then in the fourth paragraph, we added classified exempt employees to the employees, to the list of employees who may not take their short-term leave until it's accrued. But then certificated, classified administrators may use their unaccrued short-term leave. So that, again, it's fronted for them.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I guess I don't mean to interrupt your,
No, that's okay.
your flow. What is the reason that you decided to take another look at this policy? Was it just to ensure that the policy reflected our actual practice, or was there an issue that
We
came
did
up?
have a question.
Okay.
A question for a support staff personnel who hadn't actually worked, but thought that the days were going to be accrued. So we needed to straighten that out. Yeah, of course, when you're doing these policies, you think it makes perfect sense until someone
Right, until somebody else
questions
reads
and
it,
goes,
yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
understand that. Then on page 45, what we've added was to the very top paragraph that we can request verification of an employee's absence or reason for absence after 3 or more consecutive days. That's always been part of Proposition 206. That came through 206. We just never had it in our policy, so we're adding it in our policy now. And those are the only changes that we are proposing to that policy.
I have another question under family illness, not related to these changes. It states an employee may use all or any part of accumulated short-term leave or 12 weeks in any 12-month period, whichever is less, to care for or to make arrangements for the care of any member of the employee's immediate family who is ill. So that language, accrued short-term leave or 12 weeks, whichever is less, are they not guaranteed 12 weeks for family leave under the Family Medical Leave Act?
Well, you're not guaranteed 12. You can take up to 12.
You can take up to
Yes.
12, yes, not guaranteed 12, but you can take up to 12. But the way I read this is that we would only be allowing them to take the amount that they have accumulated as short-term leave.
Well, because we have a different policy for family medical leave.
Okay,
Okay, so there's a whole different policy that goes with family medical leave. But typically, so they can take this 12-month leave in all in one or interspersed.
intermittently.
Intermittently too. So I read this that it's short-term leave for 12 weeks or any 12-month period, whichever is less for the care to make arrangements for. And yeah, I really guess we don't need whichever is less.
yeah, that language bothers me
I think
because
that
it
came
seems
from
to be
Proposition 206.
in contradiction to what I know they can do under family medical leave.
Yeah, I think that came under 206, but I don't see that whichever is less is actually
You may want to
needed.
look into
Yeah.
it, because it's just language that caught me, and it makes it sound like they can't have their up to 12 weeks that I know family medical leave allows them to have, so. Thank you. Those were the only questions I had.
And this will come back for a second reading, so.
So if the policy, if that 12-week reference refers to Family Medical Leave Act, should it not say that? I mean, I don't know.
Well, there is a separate policy
There's a
for the
separate
Family Medical
policy.
Leave
And
Act.
is that cross-referenced,
Yes,
I assume?
at the end.
Okay.
But we can't go below that 12-week
Right.
period in any 12-month period.
Right.
Whether they have accrued sick time to pay for it or not, they can have the time off without pay.
Without pay.
They can use their accrual against it, but we
Correct.
can't tell them
Yes.
because they don't have the accrual that they don't have the leave, and I think that's what this says, in my mind. Okay,
I get it.
thank you.
Makes sense.
Anything else on this one, Doug? Okay, I think we have the gist of those changes, and thank you for looking into that for me. I appreciate it. All right, this will come back. We'll see it again for a second reading on the 28th, and for an action item, hopefully. All right, item 5.2, consideration revisions to policy BCB. There's all kinds of board-related
I know.
policies.
I know.
Yeah.
They're legislating us up there.
Yes.
BCB, Board Member Conflict of Interest, first reading, Dr. Bart.
Yes, so policy BCB, the board member conflict of interest, is revised to comply with the Arizona House Bill 2459 relating to school district governing boards. So language from the bill was added that states the district may employ anyone who has served as a member of the board in the preceding 2 years in a position providing services to students. So formerly, board members weren't allowed to do that. But now, because we have a shortage for substitutes and things like that, now they're allowed to do that.
So they would have had to be off the board for a period of time before they could be considered. I wonder why that is. I thought this was a weird policy, but yeah.
And then language was also added that states the district may increase that 2-year time restriction. So we could say, well, no, we want it to be 4 years. We're not doing that.
Would that would have to be policy-wide, not applicant by applicant?
Correct.
Okay.
The policy.
So what did it say, if this is a new paragraph, what did it, and it said before, if there was a prohibition before, where was that prohibition?
There was no prohibition in it. It was just known that you could not do that. So it was, I don't think there was
It
nothing
doesn't look like there
in
was ever
here.
language in there.
No, there
I
was
see.
no language in here. They were just adding it because I think in the rural areas, that became an issue. They couldn't find substitutes. And so,
That'd be the reference to 15421. That statute probably
There must be
says that
something
you
in that
can't.
statute, and because they're specifically
Yes.
saying only if you're
Yes.
providing service directly to students.
Yes.
So we couldn't be hired in admin
no,
or,
correct.
you know, the payroll department or anything like
No.
that, which is just weird.
So does that mean that currently serving board members are still prohibited?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh,
Not that I'm
yeah.
running to be a substitute
Yeah.
teacher, but.
Did you wanna take on yet another job, Amy?
No, thank you. Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah?
That seems
Well,
like a
it's,
positive, I mean, I'm
Right.
glad to see the legislature is taking steps to fix a problem we actually have.
You saying?
I'm saying I'm happy the legislature is trying to fix a problem we actually have.
Well said.
Especially for student services.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
important.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. We'll see that again in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
More board policies. 5.3, consideration of revisions to policy BDA, Board Organizational Meeting, a first reading.
Yes, so this is in alignment with House Bill 2663, which extends the time period in which a governing board must hold an organizational meeting. So the attached policy BDA was revised to state that following an election, the board must hold its organizational meeting in January following the election. So they've extended that. It can be any meeting in January now.
As opposed, did he say the first
It
meeting?
has to be between
It used to
January
be
1 and
between
January
1 and
15.
15, yeah.
Oh, I see.
And they've changed that to any meeting in January. Other revisions include who may call the meeting to order, until a new board president is elected. The addition of a statement that the board may elect a board president at any time as long as they do so in a manner consistent with Arizona open meeting law.
Can't imagine us changing our procedure and doing it in the first board meeting in January, but we've got flexibility.
But
There is.
I read this to mean if there's no election, like there isn't this year, we don't have to have an organizational meeting at all. We can continue with our current.
Isn't that interesting? In
Don't you read it
January
that way?
following the election, that is
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
that is interesting.
Counselor, I
Is
agree.
that language that comes straight out of statute, or is that our language?
No, I believe it's out of
I'm
statute.
not sure that we have to have board elections in January.
Interesting.
Just a thought I had.
Interesting. I wonder if they realized they wrote it that way.
They did.
It kind of makes sense. I mean, if you have an election and there's a new board member.
Sure.
Then you would, that person would not have had a say of who the officers are.
Exactly.
Right.
Of the board they're now serving on. So that makes sense. But if there's no change, then it seems like you would then want to take advantage of the addition at the bottom, which is we can hold an election anytime we want. We're not
I see.
long as they
obligated
follow-
in January.
You know, I did not read this that way at all. You and I think differently, that you have a brain that thinks differently than me. Which
As
is
long as it follows.
why we
the-
work so well together. Interesting, okay.
That's how I read it.
Got it. All right, we'll see it again. 5.4 is consideration of revisions to policy BE, school board meetings.
Yes, so this is in alignment with Senate Bill 1270. It was revised to state that board meeting will provide sufficient seating to accommodate attendees and that the agenda will include the topics to be discussed, decided, and the time that the public will have physical access to the meeting site.
Which we do already.
We do that already, both of those things.
Must provide sufficient seating to accommodate the reasonably anticipated number of attendees. So that's interesting, how you reasonably anticipate the number of attendees.
That's pretty vague.
Well, and
When
then,
feasible.
and then when it says you're not required to move location, so in
Right.
our case, we know what our capacity is per the fire code.
Right.
And we
Have
can-
seating for
we
that?
are prepared to accommodate everybody. And I would also add, not only have we been doing this before this statute, but, you know, we started live streaming during COVID because there was greater interest and we didn't want to limit people who had access to our board meetings. And then, I mean, setting aside when we couldn't have
Right.
visitors. And we resumed live streaming meetings for the same reason when it appeared that there were people who may not be able to
Get into our meetings.
get into our meetings. So I'm very comfortable. I feel like, you know, we try to anticipate
Yes.
what the public is going to need and want, and to meet those, you know, meet those needs. So,
When this legislation first came down the pike, there was a punitive measure against the board president.
Oh.
is that right?
There was a monetary fine
Nice.
against the board president if this was not complied with, and I read nothing in the policy about repercussion if somebody wanted to come in and sit at a board meeting and couldn't get in. I think live streaming negates any argument that you have no access to my meeting, but I thought that was very interesting, and it's kind of nice to see that that's not
Yeah,
there
it
anymore.
didn't make it into policy.
Yeah,
And of
Or
course,
should
there's,
it?
there's no requirement for live streaming. That would be onerous on, you know,
Rural.
many, rural boards, for example. I don't want to assume that just because they're rural, they don't have the, you know, technology, but not every school board is in a position to live stream meetings. But, so I'm glad that there's not that kind of,
right.
you know, it's really just about providing access to the extent possible and reasonable. And we do.
Okay, we will see that in 2 weeks, and we'll go to 5.5, which is consideration of revisions to policy BEDA, notification of board meetings.
And again, this language is similar. It's Senate Bill 1270. And it's that we revised it to include the sentence that it states, with the exception of online meetings, agendas will include the time that the public will have physical access to the meeting site. And we have been,
Oh, yeah.
No controversy there.
No, basically little housekeeping issues. which is
Yes.
fine. That was-
very minor changes.
yeah. Well, thanks for presenting all those. We will see all of those again in a couple of weeks with a full board complement, let's hope. And then we're going to move to item 6, discussion/reports. 6.1 is Arizona legislative/governmental activity.
Related to education.
I've just been reading all about this science of reading stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And Tom Horn's. Is it true that there is only one way in the state of Arizona to teach children how to read now? And we cannot, that's the way the articles have been written.
No, that is not
So,
correct.
because I know, well, I'll let you speak, because I don't know how it works, but it didn't sound like the articles got the right gist.
So, over time, there's balanced literacy and there's structured literacy, right? So one is more focused on the fundamental skills that you need to be a reader. The other one has those same things, but it's on focused on comprehension and vocabulary and things like that. So really, you need both sides of those because there are 5 components of reading, and it does include phonics, phonological awareness, the things that the foundational skills, as well as comprehension, vocabulary. So we want both of those. There has been a push for the science of reading, which is more on the orthographic mapping of words so that kids understand how words are made with sounds, with letters, the phonics rules of language. So what happened was with balanced literacy, kids didn't always understand how language worked. So the science of reading is to bring that knowledge of how words work and how our language works into the reading structure. So it's not either or, it's both.
Okay.
But there is this kind of war going on that one is better than the other, or one's more needed or less needed. And most of the states are going to this science of reading that they're legislating it, so it's getting this bad reputation. So you have to have both sides of it.
So we're not concerned about this at all, this hamstringing and hampering our teachers to instill a love of reading in our children,
No,
which has been the gist of all of the articles that I've read about the science of reading, for the most part anyway.
I don't know if I agree with that, but yes.
That's what I
thought it was directed toward a method of teaching and requiring this singular method of teaching. Is that not what the mandate is from the Department of Education?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So to teach reading, you have to have an adopted program, and we just adopted a new program, Wonders.
Right.
And that program has to have all the components of teaching reading, which is phonics, vocabulary, comprehension, phonemic awareness, and phonological awareness. So you have to have all of those components. And so you're bringing in all of the instructional methods that teach those concepts. So to be a well-rounded student, you have to have the foundational skills as well as the comprehension, which then develops the love of reading. So it's not.
So where does science of reading fit into that?
And I'm just quoting the article. It was a teacher,
Right.
some award-winning teacher that was lamenting this change in this mandate from on high, and
It doesn't tell you what to teach. It doesn't tell you how to teach. It tells you what to teach. Okay, so these are the phonics skills that kids need. These are the comprehension skills that kids need. These are the vocabulary skills that kids need. You can teach them any way you want. We have to have
the components.
the components.
So again, it's not something that we're concerned about.
No, we have in our district moved to incorporating many of the science of reading components into our instruction. Because we were missing some of the phonics in our early grades. And so kids need that. They have to have that to build on those other skills. So the science of reading has grown in our district through the Read Strong program, first of all, and now with our response to intervention program, we're really focusing on that. But then each of the classrooms are using the Wonders program to get all of the components of reading into their daily instruction.
Thank you. Anything else under legislative or governmental activity? Okay. Future agenda considerations. Doug, you know we're canceled for tomorrow. We'll just wait to hear from Mary when we'll do agenda planning. And if you can't make it, we can find someone depending on her availability. But does anyone have anything for future agenda considerations?
Not I.
If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Thank you for a nice meeting, everybody.
Thank you for the
What's that?
presentation, Doug.
Under an hour, mark the tape. That's good work.
Yeah,